In 1837, some citizens were dissatisfied because they wanted more democracy in the government of Upper Canada. A group of men, led by Alexander Mackenzie, marched on Toronto. The rebellion failed, and many rebels were imprisoned or executed. Mackenzie himself had a price put on his head. They burned one of our ships, we burned one of their ships. Things were starting to get hot and heavy. This gives you a little sense of why it was that the British were worried. After the rebellion of 1837, the British sent garrisons of soldiers to the Canadas, including to Brockville, Kingston, Toronto, Hamilton, Amherstburg, St. Thomas, and, of course, London. The troops were almost never used for warfare. The officers especially spent their time enriching the cultural and economic life of the towns they occupied, painting, some of them building paintings, organizing sleighing parties and steeplechases, and of course, courting the local belles. In many towns, they jury-rigged playing spaces in which to stage garrison theatricals. In London, they converted a frame barn for this purpose, located where one London place is now. They called it, as many garrison theatres were called, the Theatre Royal. Stumps, one of the things that we do in the play when we hear these things come over is we just pretend it's thunder. So I'll ask you to join me. Stumps supported the rough board seats that you can be sitting on right now, and the roof was supported, if you can imagine this, by standing trees. The military were making the theater of war. There were lots of shows put on by the officers in the early 1840s. And you'll see a few of these at the bar outside. But in 1844, the theater was rented to two troops of local amateurs. The first called the Gentlemen Amateurs, and the second called the Shakespeare Club. These troops, thanks to the Theatre Royal, started the local amateur theatrical tradition. The stage of the Theatre Royal was trod by some interesting people in its history. John Herbert Caddy was a bit of an Indiana Jones figure who went on to lead the first British expedition to the Maya city of Palenque. John Herbert Caddy did some lovely, actually, we cut John Herbert Caddy, I apologize for that. Sir Daniel License, moving right along, took charge of the theatre and did some scene paintings of London, and also in the Theatre Royal. He regularly played the women's parts. Graves Simcoe Lee was reportedly chased off the Theatre Royal stage by his father, one of the first mayors of London, for neglecting to tell him that he was playing a female role. The Miller and His Men was a highly popular melodrama in its time. Melodrama meaning drama with melody. But it's come to be associated with this kind of mustachioed villain, jack-jawed hero, fainting damsels in distress kind of approach to the theater. And audiences often would spontaneously cheer the heroes and boo the villains. In this production, Julie Comfort will encourage you to do this by holding up signs with cheer, or oh, the names of particular characters. Yeah. So when you see Julie hold up the boo sign, I want you all to boo. In fact, let's practice that right now, shall we? Grind off. Boo! Has secretly stolen the mill from Kelmar. Kelmar now lives in poverty with his daughter, Claudine. Claudine is being pursued by two suitors, the poor, handsome Lucas and the old but rich Grindoff. Grindoff is plotting to kidnap Claudine and forcibly make her his bride. Lucas plans to make himself worthy of Claudine by exposing Grindoff. Two officers of the regiment, Wilbur and Sir Walt, arrive unexpectedly at Kelmar's cottage, and the plot thickens. We hope that you will enjoy this historic recreation of Miller and his men here in the Miller Barn.